Welcome back. It's part 2. I'm still Andrew, and I'm still asking Vvinni questions about this, the Guide to the Ordinal Resource Library podcast, in this second installment of...
Question time!
We've been talking about art that's specifically a reference point or like an influence or an inspiration for what you're doing with the ordinal systems. But I just want to take a quick moment here to talk about what's some other art that you really love or that's on your mind right now.
I'm going to talk about 2 pieces first, and then probably more. The first piece really changed how I view writing dystopian and or utopian fiction, and that's the book Everything for Everyone. This is a book that's a future oral history about a revolution in New York City that resulted in a bunch of essentially anarchist communes popping up. And how these communes developed, what their ideas were, and then building up this future where it actually works. And they actually build something great and something where people are able to exist as themselves and exist authentically. And having this piece of fiction build this world that actually works was kind of revolutionary for me. You know, so often I think when we look at future worlds, it's in a dystopian setting.
Yes.
We use dystopia as a way to comment on our world and say what's not working. And flipping it on its head, showing it as this future world where we took a choice, we did something different, and it worked out, was so surprising to me and completely changed how I thought about the dystopia-utopia dynamic. After reading Everything from Everyone, I think I also, you're going to notice this in season 2, I kind of just start trying to put communes into everything and trying to start, dissect how communes and how, anarchy and communism and all of these ideas of, people coming together and working together exist as an idea, how it fails in practice. Basically, the sort of things that I find interesting about communism, but also the sort of things that make me say that I'm not a communist.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of the things that I find most interesting, I think, about the ordinal systems, and it's something that I get a little shiver of satisfaction every time Girl reaches back that far into the past. Granted, there's this history of the Great Mistake, and there's a lot of this history has kind of been lost to time. But these questions of early on, how did these societies first develop? And how did these very different species decide that they wanted governments, or what those governments would be like? It's similar to I know one conversation we had kind of early on in your writing of the podcast was just because you were on a space ark that came from space and then crashed, that doesn't mean that you can get back there. Getting from the surface of a planet up into space is really, really hard. And all these different civilizations had to do it independently from one another. I think it kind of drives home for me the massive time scale that we're working with in this history, but also just seeing the very different ways that happened. It just seems like such a storytelling opportunity.
Yeah. Going back into the past and exploring how creature civilizations set themselves up. Going back to this ongoing theme, it's something we explore more in season 2, is how government came to be and how creatures started working together. The fact of the matter is that they kind of did it out of necessity. That you have these space arcs that crash landed onto these planets, and in order to survive, these creatures had to learn to work together. Fish who are stuck in their tanks had to learn how to communicate with creatures outside of their tanks in order to get food, in order to get resources and all of this stuff. And you kind of get into this history of how this all came to be. And yeah, I do agree that it's this fascinating history, both in terms of how governments came to be and how governments started to set themselves up, but also in terms of how space travel became a thing and how communication between other planets became a thing and traveling between other planets became a thing. Because it is this massive time scale that we're looking at, but it's also this very small time scale if you actually map it all out. Time in the ordinal systems is something fluid because of time waves. Essentially, you've got 5,000 years from the destruction of Earth to now that everything happened in. And it's a big number for humans to think about, but it's such a small number when you're thinking about cosmic history.
Right.
That element of the ordinal systems, I think I'm still hand-waving in a bit. It's definitely a fascinating part and definitely something worth exploring. And I think throughout developing the ordinal systems and throughout developing Girl, there are hand waves that I do that I then have to go back and justify and explore how these hand waves actually physically interact with the world.
Yeah.
That's what time waves are. The time waves are a way of saying, like, okay, there's this small amount of time. There's 5,000 years, but this 5,000 years has kind of expanded to include a lot more time, millions and millions of years. So I can justify these creatures evolving and growing in a way that actually makes sense.
It's such a great device. I can see how it could be really useful to you as a writer, but it's also like, I don't know, it just adds this layer of complexity that it's another thing that whenever Girl talks about it, I feel like, oh, there's so much here.
Yeah, there's so much there. And like, especially once you get into like exploring the human impact of it and how humans work within this time wave narrative is fascinating. You know, not only do you have like Cox Dubois, who's a creature who doesn't actually exist, but whose work exists and who only lives through their work.
Right.
But you also have, in the Space Station Star Siege episode, you get the idea of this captain of a starship who realized that he's going to get assassinated and the complete apocalypse is going to happen, and working to stop it while also realizing that it might be inevitable. There's this very human fear to it that I think is fascinating. So the book is Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. And the book is by Iman Abdelhadi and M.E. O'Brien.
I'll put that on my pile. I've got such a big pile.
Yeah.
What about some more? What about some other art that you love?
Yeah. So the other piece that this didn't influence the ordinal systems at all because it just came out. But it's another game that I'm fascinated by. Like, if this game came out when I was developing the ordinal systems, it absolutely would have changed. Well, not changed, but it would have influenced how I think about the ordinal systems and setting it up and the kinds of stories you can tell through it and how to tell stories through it. So it's a game called TR-49, and it is really fascinating. It's this puzzle game where you're just scrolling through this massive computer archive detailing alternate histories branching off from the turn of the last century. You come across all these garbled entries, but you resolve one, and resolving one entry gives you access to other entries, and you're basically connecting these authors and ideas and everything throughout all of these different the idea is that there's this computer that eats books, and so you're going through all of these different books that this computer has eaten and saying, okay, here's the author who wrote this book and this book and this book, and here's how that author interacted with this author, and this author is this author's son, and so here, and you start to build out this world throughout all of these different little tiny book entries, and it is absolutely fascinating.
Wow, this looks really cool.
Like, I only saw about 2 hours of it because, again, like I interact with media in ways that you're probably not supposed to. TR-49, I don't have time to play a lot of games, but I can watch a lot of games. So I watch Let's Plays. And so TR-49 was a Let's Play that I watched. So I've only seen about like 2 hours of it. There's still a lot of things about this world that I don't know, that I have like theories of. But yeah, it was so fascinating. Like it's looking at like world building and wiki diving and like scouring articles for references to others, and it just seems so fun. And yeah, it's another game that like it seems, for me as somebody who's gone on a lot of deep wiki wormhole dives, it's something very satisfying for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also something that it doesn't seem hard to do. Like it doesn't seem hard to play the game. It seems like something that's accessible for everybody. They're able to go in and play and then learn about this huge new world and how it's different from ours and how potential time travel works and things like that. And yeah, it's cool.
I'm going to mention, since we're talking about art that we like, another piece of art that I'm kind of in the middle of and have been for years at this point. But I've been reading Proust. I've been reading Swan's Way, the Lydia Davis translation. My older brother, Jonathan, has this habit of every once in a while, just like as a Christmas gift or something, just dropping a bomb on me in the form of like some incredibly dense piece of literature that I then feel obliged to read. He was the person who gave me Infinite Jest, which I went on to force you to read years ago, and make a podcast about. This is another one of his, and I the only reason I bring it up is because it feels like in some ways it follows a similar impulse in world building. Like it's not immensely concerned with narrative, it's concerned with memory and this question of kind of like what details are important in somebody's life or in a place or in a family. Proust was participating in this literary tradition of the flaneur, which is just like somebody who kind of goes around and, writes down little witticisms that they hear other people say or noticed stuff and wrote it down. And it feels like in some ways that's a similar impulse to what world builders more generally do and what you do with Girl, which is like to take these disparate details and make something immersive out of them. I highly recommend it. It's I'm still only about halfway through. I'm just going at a snail's pace through it, but it's a delightful read, and it's a lot funnier than I expected it to be. Anyway, we're talking about world building here. Let's segue into our next question, which is one that I think, like, I'm really curious what your opinions specifically are about this. What do you think makes for good world building? And are there certain things that you have to, as a writer, exercise restraint in when you're building out this vast reality?
When it comes to world building, the biggest advice that I have is something that I think I've already said, which is that world building needs to come through character. That you use characters to world build. You don't use world building to make characters, in a way.
Yeah.
If I were to redo the Ordinal systems, if I were to start from absolute zero again, there's a few things that I would make different. I think I partially did this with Black Box and with the Ordinal systems, but I'm not sure if I really did. Is focusing first on the small story, focusing on your character stories, and then going into these world building deep dives based off of your characters. That's, going back to Adventure Time, you don't want to know every single thing about the Great Mushroom War before you start writing. You want to know about the characters, and then if they interact with the Great Mushroom War, then you explore it.
Yeah, there's something almost like limiting as a writer, I think, about like if you know too much backstory that hasn't been communicated to your audience yet, it kind of paralyzes you in a way. It really cuts off so many avenues of development.
Exactly, yeah. Because like the things that have really made me so excited about working in Girl and working in the Ordinal systems, now that I am like going through like season 2, even season 3, and even season 1 and everything. Like it's not the world building deep dives that I did. It's not like going into this huge document that I have about how everything all interacts with itself. It's the empty spaces that have really excited me.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming across something that I don't know the answer to. Like I talked about it with the bugs, is that was so freeing to come across something that I had no idea what the answer was for them. I knew that they were there. I knew that they existed, but I didn't know anything about them. And it was just so freeing to be able to come to this question mark and not know. I hope I'm getting better at this, but like when we have discussions about like critiquing episodes of Girl, you would raise a very good point, and I'd be like, well, actually, here's the canon answer, and here's what's actually going on, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just, it's not helpful. Having empty spaces in your world is something that's so engaging, that you don't need to know everything, that you need to know your characters, you need to know who they are, and then from there, you can explore anything else.
Right, because none of those empty spaces are actually empty, just like no space in the world is actually empty. There's always something there that can be discovered if it turns out that that's something you're interested in doing later on.
The season 2 episode that I'm working on right now is all about the Outlands, which is the place where all of the creatures who didn't neatly fit into the Empire system got thrown into. And I knew that they existed. I knew that I kind of loved the Outlands because it's where pangolins are, and I love pangolins.
Oh, yes.
But I didn't know that much about them. And so, like, it's another thing where I came across this question mark, this thing that I didn't know about, and being able to explore and build this up again and everything. It scratches that world building itch. I think as a world builder, like so much in early world building, both with me and with other people who I've talked to, you just want to go deeper and deeper and deeper because it's so exciting. Mm-hmm. It's so exciting just having all of these corners to explore and to build up. And I don't want to say it's easy because it's not, but it's when you're in the early stages of world building, there's no consequence to what you're doing.
Right.
And so it's not so much that it's easy, it's that you can just make decisions and you don't have to worry about like, okay, does this actually line up with this? And here's the history I've written. Does it fit neatly into there? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can just create. I think when you have these question marks and these empty spaces, it builds you up much more for this pure creation.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that I see you have some notes on here, not to spy over your shoulder, but you write some about like the development of language. And this is something that I think is like really key to the Ordinal Systems universe, is that there are these like deep linguistic hooks into the various cultures that you discuss. And those languages seem to me to be very carefully thought out. Can you talk about kind of how that process has worked?
Yeah, I am fascinated by language. I have always loved it. I've always loved how language is fluid but definitive, and how it interacts with our physical reality. I have a huge document all about languages, and even like I did RC kind of backwards. Mm-hmm. Modern RC being the language of IPIS and being like the main English like of the Ordinal Systems. I've now researched into conlanging. I've read books about it. I've done a whole bunch of things, and I did it completely backwards. So I made the orthography of RC first. I went back in time and I decided that in Earth, we would go to an emoji-based language, and that this emoji-based language would be how space arcs are written. So I developed this Earth language, and then I developed how it looks and how it would look on these broken ships. So these glyphs, these emojis, then becomes glitched and cracked and broken. And then from those glitches and those breaks and everything, you get this new language of antiquity RC. And so I started to develop orthography first. I started to develop how this language looks and how it exists in this world. And it started out complicated and very with a whole bunch of lines and circles and squiggles and everything. And it was just this gradual simplifying of it into eventually what modern RC looks like, where the idea is everything you can write, you can make with 3 strokes. I think if you actually look at modern RC, it could have been simplified a lot more. And I could have done a better job with it. But that was the idea. Basically, taking the idea of how orthography has evolved from like hieroglyphs to letter glyphs to letters, and this simplifying that happens over time, and applying that to this orthography of glitches and broken things. That's what I did first. In terms of how most conlangers do it, probably how you should do it, orthography should probably be one of the last things you do. But
conlang is not a term that I've heard. What does that mean?
Oh, it is a constructed language.
Oh, okay.
Combination of those 2 words, constructed language. So it's basically whenever you are making a new language, whether it's something like Esperanto is a conlang, but so is Klingon. Both of these are languages that have been created rather than languages that have evolved.
Gotcha.
Going back then to English-like languages, I also did this backwards. I knew about modern RC before I knew about the languages that would have fed into modern RC. Most recently, I made one of my favorite languages for the Ordinal systems. And it's one that we're probably never going to hear at all. But it is fascinating. It's a proto-language for an alien race, a non-Ordinal race. Because then this proto-language leads into the language of how what we actually hear and interact with in the world of the Ordinal systems. And so when conlanging, you have to start at the very beginning. You have to start with these proto-languages. Especially if you're working on creating an English-like, you're starting at the very beginning. From these proto-languages, how your antiquity languages get set up. So what that means for the Ordinal systems is, in a way I kind of started with it with the New Earth sonoglyphs, as I call them, but not really. I didn't know, I have no idea how Old Earth language worked. But yeah, in terms of how you're, quote, supposed to do this, you start off with your proto-language, you go into your antiquity languages. You start looking at your ancient Greek, your Latin, your language families, these early languages that then get mutated and spread out into more and more languages. Because then from Latin, you get French, you get Spanish, you get Portuguese, you get Romani, you get so many other languages. And that's just from one thing that came from one proto-language. Linguistically, and I'm speaking not too intellectually here because there's a lot that I need to learn about linguistics, but my understanding is that the current understanding is that there is this proto-language, this Indo-European proto-language that probably began with Mesopotamia, where human civilization kind of started meeting and needing to be able to communicate. And then from there, everything mutated and everything started growing. So your proto-language is the core. Then from there, you go to your antiquity languages. From there, you go to the next level, and you just gradually build up more and more things until eventually you get to your English-like. English is a language that is an amalgam of so many things. English has taken little bits and bops from everywhere and smash them all together in ways that don't quite make sense. And that's how you get to the idiosyncrasies of English. And so to kind of bring this back to the ordinal systems, if I was to redo this, I would probably have, in terms of when it came to creating a lexicon for these words, creating a lexicon for modern RC, I would probably start with the very basic language that came from the space arcs. I would develop Antiquity RC from that language of the space arcs, and using words from Space Arc into Antiquity RC. Then, from Antiquity RC, look at the language families. Where those come from are like the language of birds, a language of rodents. So then you have these language families and other language families from like the Awurit in another completely different corner of the universe. You have all of these language families building up and growing until eventually in the Empire system, you have this array of 27 different languages, all being spoken in their own individual empires. Well, then you can start going into how modern RC is developed and how your English is developed, which is taking things that make sense from one language, stealing it, and putting it into yours. And then you get into this world building aspect of it as well, this language world building, where you start to understand how these empires are seen in the world. Like, would you use a French language to describe engineering? And what does that mean?
Right.
Because now the language that you use for engineering says that these people are understood as engineers. They're understood as the biggest scientific minds. You start to develop assumptions. You start to develop how this world understands itself, all through how you approach language.
I love idioms myself. I'm a big fan of various idioms because I think similarly to some of the things that happen in Girl's narration, they like open up this whole mysterious world of like, oh, I wonder, how did that come to be like that? My absolute favorite idiom is from European Spanish. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but pensar de inmortalidad del cangrejo, which I believe literally translates to thinking about the immortality of the crab. When your mind has wandered and you've been daydreaming, you'd say you've been thinking about the immortality of the crab.
Oh, that's lovely.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So, that's language. Is there other stuff that you want to talk about in the question of world building?
The final point about world building that I want to pass on, that I've kind of come to realize about it, that I didn't necessarily do with the ordinal systems, but I'd like to do continuing on and with other worlds that I build, is kind of the same understanding that you get throughout any screenwriting class or any writing class, which is the idea that less is more.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeds into what I was saying about having empty spaces. That even though it is so tempting to just keep on world building and keep on building and building and building and having this entire huge 1,000-page document of lore that you can go into and find out the exact details of how everything all clicks together. What's more exciting as a writer, what's more exciting as a creator, and what's more exciting as a viewer, I think, is having questions and having less. Being able to not have these huge paragraph-long lore dumps, but just like little tiny bits and pieces sprinkled in throughout, I think are more enticing as a viewer and a listener than it is having something huge and obtuse to listen to.
Right. In writing about the ordinal systems, what is your relationship to satire?
Satire and humor have always been pivotal to this series. And I think that goes into how I, as a human, understand our world. I understand things through humor. Satire is being able to take apart an idea and show how ridiculous it is. Satire is about exposing absurdity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely something that's inside of the ordinal systems. going back to Girl and season 2 and everything, I mentioned the lobster episode. The lobster episode is essentially an episode about race and race relations. And it's something that has always been a part of this world when I was developing it as an animated series and everything, is that lobsters are this oppressed minority. And being able to explore how race works through something that is so stupid as people not liking a lobster.
Mm-hmm.
Humor was always going to be important to Girl, and humor was always going to be important to this podcast. Both because it's how I see the world, but I also think it's important for remembering details. I think as people, we remember jokes more than we remember something very dour and serious. And maybe that's just me as a comedian trying to justify myself, but I do think that it's easier to remember a detail if it's funny than it is if it's something deeply dramatic and dour and very straight-faced. I think laughter is a powerful thing, and humor is a powerful thing. And humor accesses certain parts of your brain, stick with you, and kind of alter how you think and understand things. So yeah, I always wanted there to be jokes in Girl, and I always wanted that humor to be satirical. I think, in a way, satire makes writing easy. It meant that I could use the ordinal system. When writing about the ordinal systems, I can use our world as inspiration.
Yeah.
Not only can I use it, but I can comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
I can bring up themes in our world. I can shine a light into our world and hopefully change the way people view it. In terms of like large scale, why do I write and why do I make art and why do I keep on trying? It's because I want to be able to communicate with people, and I want to be able to show people that there's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I also think that science fiction and satire are just wonderful bedfellows together. Mm-hmm. I think satire is so entwined in science fiction. Sci-fi is inherently about looking at how we exist in the world and how we define ourselves as human, using this framework of technology and science and everything, but being able to look at how that changes who we are at our core, how that influences us and builds us up and breaks us down and all of that. It uses genre as a way to explore questions of existence in society. And science fiction has very routinely used satire as a way of exploring these themes. Some of the earliest satire is Gulliver's Travels, the one with the Lilliputians and everything, which was a deeply satirical piece. But it's also vaguely science fiction-y. I feel like it's considered to be an early piece of science fiction, but it's not the earliest form of science fiction. Yeah, I think there's also something to be said about absurdity and using absurdity to your benefit. I think the ordinal systems is a deeply absurd place. And using that absurdity and acknowledging that absurdity and then using it as a way of viewing our world kind of helps to expose how deeply silly some of our beliefs are and how deeply silly we all are as humans. And yeah, I think that's something powerful.
So the seed of this idea dates back to when you were extremely young, and it's something that you've thought an enormous amount about and written an enormous amount about. It's seen so many different permutations as a potential creative project. What has it been like taking this idea that has been like so quintessentially your own and going into production on it in a way that like necessitates bringing in collaborators and literally other voices, but also sound engineers and critical companions and critical companions? Is that a thing?
Sure.
Critical perspectives. Is there anything about this process that has been surprising to you or particularly exciting? Or are there things that you feel like you've had to sort of compromise on in ways that you weren't particularly pleased about?
For the most part, I feel very excited about this. In fact, I would even say, not even for the most part, I would say I am deeply excited about this, and I'm so happy with how this all turned out. Back when I was starting out thinking about this as a podcast, I decided to do it because I thought it would be something small. I thought it would be something that I would be able to do all on my own. And I think bringing in other voices and other people has only enriched this world and has made it into something so much better. And I'm so happy that it's not just me making it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have been surprising about it. Part of what surprised me is the bugs, and being able to see these characters who were frankly kind of underwritten, grown into their own people. The biggest surprise was in the character of Three. Three is written, they are pretty light. I didn't really know what I wanted with Three. I kind of, like, going back to, like, world building discussions, I knew lore implications of Three, but I didn't know who they were. But Anya made the role into her own, and Anya has made Three into such a wonderful little weirdo that I am so delighted by. Anya's made Three into this, like, teacher's pet, who's just, like, trying to, like, suck up to Six and trying to, like, show everybody that they're so good and so smart and everything. There's also this, like, attraction to girl that runs throughout Three with Anya's performance that is so fascinating that I just want to explore so much more in season 2. And then just how Anya's done, like, so many line readings. Particularly, I can't remember which episode it is now, but it's when they're talking about lamps and how much everybody loves lamps because they're bugs, and of course they love lamps.
Are these star points useful?
You can get a lamp with them.
Oh, we do like lamps.
The way Anya says "we do love lamps" is, like, so thoughtful and so much like, yes, this is a true fact about us. It's delightful. I love it so much. And then even 2 as well. Gabby did great work with 2. I love her work with 2. I think there's still so much more that I need to explore with 2, and especially 2's relationship with 1 that I want to continue to explore. But the way that Gabby with 2 and Jason with 1 built up this relationship and built up these 2 people and their growing friendship and attraction and everything, I think is really beautiful to hear. The emotional work that Gabby did with the Starship entry when 2 kind of said that she doesn't trust 1.
Yes.
And 1's deep pain with that and everything. And 2's reaction to it and everything. It is so powerful.
Do you trust me?
I like you, 1. You have a good heart.
But
Okay, notes are taken. Let's move on.
I thought we were friends.
We are. It's hard for me to trust people.
I'm gonna go check in with 6.
1, let's talk about this.
It's okay. You don't trust me. That's all there is.
Great.
It's incredible work, and I am so happy with everything that Gabby did with it.
One question that I have that I think is worth exploring a little bit, that maybe can touch on some of the other corners of your creative life that are maybe not known to listeners. How did you know these people? How did you get these people involved in this project?
I knew these people because I was part of an improv troupe with them. I do improv in Chicago. I have for a number of years, probably close to a decade now, and something that's been amazing for stress management and making new friendships and a bunch of other personal projects of mine. When it came time to start thinking about how to find voices, I was so worried about finding them. But as I've gotten to know more and more performers and interact with more and more improvisers and comedians and everything, I've been able to get this stable of people who are happy to perform and happy to do voice work and everything, and who are just, like, really funny, talented people, very creative people who I love to collaborate with. Kevin, who plays Six, we've never been in the same improv troupe, but we've seen each other perform and seen each other play. And I approached him. I actually approached Kevin at first because I thought he would make a good Five. But hearing him and his decisions with Six and everything, I realized there was no other person to play it. And I think, Kevin's done so great capturing the panic of Six, capturing, I don't want to say the incompetence of Six, but how Six has gone from somebody who has built up this very detailed worldview, had it immediately collapse, and has just gone into project management, triage work right off the bat. And seeing then Six go from that into somebody who, I think by the time we end season 1, Six is a lot more assured in himself as a captain. He knows more about what he's doing and how he's managing this. I think we're definitely going to realize that Six still doesn't know a whole lot and is still going to be panicking about a whole lot. But there's definitely this growth with Six that I think Kevin really captured with it. Even outside of improv, Daniel is a friend who I met through a writer's group. Daniel played Ori Rossum. He also did streaming. He's done a podcast of his own called A Smashing Theory. It's over now, but I encourage you to look it up if you like Smash Brothers. It was great getting him in there as well, and getting his voice in there. And he did some great work bringing humanity to this weird fish creature.
As I've said before, I can't speak highly enough about the talent that you've brought in, the voice casting, and the production on this podcast is really just top notch. It's a delight to hear these performances. I think one of the things that's really amazing about the performances, in particular the Bugs, is that they really get very little time to convey their character arcs, and yet, like, I really feel that scene with this, or the several scenes where Two is discussing their problems with trusting people and kind of the outgrowth of like how that friendship expands and changes because of that conversation, is done with such economy, and it's handled so well by the actors.
Exactly, yeah. The structural thing of the Bugs is to have little voices come in to break apart these long blocks of text that I'm reading. They get like little parts at the beginning, little parts at the end, little parts interspersed in there. But yeah, I do agree. I think there is so much characterization that happens through these voices and through these performances that even when you look at Paul Binkley, who does Five, he has so little to work for, but I think Five is one of the strongest characters out there. And there's like so much that Paul's bringing to Five that is just incredible.
What can you tell us about your future plans for Girl? Is there anything you're particularly excited about in season 2?
Yes. Season 2 is, I feel like it's a lot bigger than season 1. I think it kind of takes what worked with season 1, what I liked about season 1, and grows it. With season 1, I wasn't sure. When I first started writing these scripts, I didn't know that I'd have so many extra voices coming in. And so there were some opportunities for other people to come in and provide voices with like Ori Rossum, with Cox Dubois, with the language learning program and all of that. But there wasn't a lot. With season 2, now that I know I have people who can come in and provide voices, there's a lot more voices coming in. It feels a lot more rich with other characters and people coming in and speaking in their own authentic voice and giving definition to these characters. You know, we're going to find out a bit about Grande Pink in season 2, and we find out about Grande Pink through his own words, and we get to find out about like how he defines himself and everything. And yeah, I've got a performer who I'm hoping to be able to tap for Grande, who's just going to be able to really make this work and really breathe life into him. Also with season 2, we're following the bugs as they start to explore the Ordinal systems. They're going from the little desolate rock that they're on in their spaceship, and they're traveling to Space Station Starsiege. And that's kind of the arc of season 2, is them going on travels and stopping at different cities and talking to people and everything. There's a lot more opportunity to have present day discussions in there. I have yet to actually sit down and write through the bug part of season 2, but it's going to be, I'm really excited with it. I'm excited about the different ways that I'm going to explore, like I said, the relationship between 1 and 2 and the give and take between them. And specifically, I feel like right now there's a lot of space being given for 1 that probably shouldn't exist. And I'm not sure if 1 is respecting 2's emotions that well. And I want to explore this relationship and how every relationship needs give and take and equal space for equal people. I think we're going to find out more about 5 and 4 in season 2, and we're going to find out more about who they are and what they want in the world. We're going to find out more about 3 and kind of the ways that 3 exists and kind of the secrets that they hold and all of that. There's a lot of bug stories that I want to tell. I think also going back to talking about Girl Season 2 being bigger, we're also looking at ideas of privilege and power and how that exists in the systems, but through the scope of talking about stories about the 2 most populous creature groups, which are birds and rodents, and examining how these creatures have come to define themselves, how they have grown to power, what that means, and how they use it.
That sounds thrilling. I'm so excited for season 2. I've had a chance to look at rough drafts of many of the episodes that are coming up, and I have to say my favorite is the Xmas, the Christmas episode. It just had me in stitches for the whole thing. I after we did our read through, when I got off the call with you, I had to read the whole thing to my partner Brianna, just because I could not get enough of the way it was written and the way it just the narration just kind of grabs you by the lapels and pulls you through this whole vast, almost completely incomprehensible belief structure. And the whole time is like, you agree with me, right? This is amazing and wonderful, right? It's just so much fun.
Yeah, that episode it was such an absolute joy to write. It was so quick to write. I feel like it was just living in my head and it just organically came out. And it's a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to hear how it comes out and how it all comes together.
You mentioned the language learning program, and I do want to just give a brief call out to that as being one of my favorite moments in the season.
Hello, Otto.
Thank you. Stole tea.
I'm sorry. J'avais ma thumb.
Can I have some food? Mali moda mighty bofage.
Yes.
No.
I am alive. Ma thumb.
I think it epitomizes what this podcast does so well, which is to kind of make you feel like you're in over your head in a way that you can still sort of keep track of what's going on. The voice acting by, I know Rosemary Pierce, and the other actors escape me, and the way the production brought it all together, it just felt like my brain was being rewired in a really deeply both pleasing and disorienting way.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. Thank you so much. That is exactly what I want. Yeah, like you said, so much of Girl is about being in way over your head, and you're kind of just playing catch up, but you're also trying to maybe learn about it. Real quick, I've got the all the performers here of the language
amazing
process.
Yes,
that's Sean Francis, Rosemary Pierce, David Graham Armstrong, and Heather Carlson.
Amazing.
Yeah, they all did great work, and hearing everybody come together and perform these voices for season 1, it's just been an absolute joy. 10 out of 10, no notes from me. I have loved every minute of it.
That's so good to hear. You're a multidisciplinary artist. Girl isn't your only creative outlet. You're a filmmaker, you're a visual artist, you're a writer of a broad and varied spectrum of different things. You're an improv performer. How does Girl and the Ordinal System universe sit within your creative process? Do you feel like this is part of an exorcism that you just need to get it out and then move on from it? Or is this something that you see being a component of your creative output for the rest of your life, or somewhere in between?
I think somewhere in between is probably the most honest answer. When I was thinking about season 1 and trying to be realistic about it, I had to confront the idea of, what if season 1 didn't work out? What if no one listened to it? What if I tried, I made this, but season 1 would be it, and we wouldn't move on to season 2? And I came to realize that I would still want to try and do something with this world. Like I said, I've started very loosely thinking about season 3 even, and I don't know if season 3 is going to exist. Season 2 has to build off season 1. Season 2 has to come out. Season 2 has to be finished written. If this doesn't work out, I still want to try to do something with this world. I think it's a delightful place to live in. I think there's so many stories to be told in this world and so much complexity that it seems a shame to just throw it away because one thing didn't work out. So I still deeply want to, if Girl does work out, I still deeply want to create an animated series. I still want to create Black Box and have this be a different part of this world. But if neither of these work out, I was thinking of maybe trying short stories. I was thinking of maybe try to find another outlet for this. In terms of how this sits in my creative process, like you've said, I've worked on this project, I've worked on this world for so long. It's almost like a sunk cost fallacy, I guess.
Yeah.
That I've invested so much time and energy into making this that I need to continue, and I need to keep on exploring options with it. It brings together so many things that I've been working on. I've done a lot of short science fiction projects before, science fiction movie projects. And this is continuing the exploration of themes in those projects, themes of identity, how we define ourselves, how we let other people define us, and how we grow past that. Even in terms of like visual arts and how I approach visual arts and painting. It's difficult to say because it's something that's so different, but it is, I feel like there is something to say about it. I'm just not sure if I have the language for it. This feels like a culmination, is what I'm trying to get at here. It's a culmination of what I've done so far, and it's where I want to go and where I want to pursue for now. Is it always going to be that way? Probably not, honestly. But for right now, I want to keep on exploring it. I want to explore every possible avenue with it. I want to keep on telling stories in this world because it's so fascinating to me. And there's still so many more stones to upturn and so many more places to look. And I'm really excited for it.
There's a lot of things about this whole project that appeal to me, but I think one of the biggest things philosophically is just giving the attention and the respect and the space to this like childhood fantasy and taking it at face value and pulling those threads to see where they lead, I think is really charming and lovely. And it makes me kind of reflect back on my own fantasy worlds that I built as a little kid. And it makes me think back to those with great fondness.
Yeah, I think there is a fondness to it. I think there's a fondness and a playfulness to it because it's growing out of this idea of play, that it was play done by a child that inspired all of this. I'm not sure if I like explicitly said it here, but back when I was first thinking about developing these stories, taking my childhood stories and turning them into something else, I kept on grabbing hold of the idea that these stories were something that meant so much to me. And I loved telling them so much that if I loved them, other people might like them too. And this desire to share this odd little piece of myself with other people is something that it's why I create art, is to be able to bring parts of myself to the outside world and show parts of myself to people. And it's been deeply rewarding.
I know nothing is set in stone, but do you have any information that you can share with me and your listeners about when we can expect things to start showing up in our feeds for season 2?
Yeah. So I have already made the claim that season 2 will premiere of October this year, and I'm sticking by it. I'm getting worried about it, honestly, but it's doable. It's doable, and we're going to make it happen. Season 2 of this year is coming out in October.
Spectacular. I'm really looking forward to it.
Season 1 has been such a joy to work on. You know, I wasn't able to talk too much about Steven's contributions to season 1. Steven is my sound editor. He did some really great work.
Absolutely, yes.
I really appreciate, everything that everything he did, creating this texture of girl and creating the sound of girl and everything. It's just absolutely incredible. I'm so happy with everybody who worked on this. I think it turned out great. I'm so excited for season 2. I love it. I think you're all going to love it too. And I'm really excited to see where this all goes.
Well, thank you for having me on your feed and letting me hurl some questions at you. It's been thrilling to be a part of this creative process and seeing the podcast take shape and then getting to hear it in its finished form. I think it has absolutely lived up to what you hoped it would be from the beginning, and I'm so excited to hear more of it in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This episode of Girl, the Guide to the Ordinal Resource Library, was edited by Andrew Gingerich. Music was by Roll Music. You have a question or a comment? Then send us an email to urdguide, URDguide, @gmail.com. And follow us on social media, urdguide, URDguide, at Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all later. Bye!